All right, everyone, welcome back. Today, I have Amanda Grabb with me. She is a chronic illness, pain, and trauma coach. Welcome to ICU, Amanda.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you in this episode about just so many different topics. I mean, I sent you a bunch of questions ahead of time, and I feel like, yeah, we're going to hit those questions, but I think we're going to just go off on various, tangents, but it's
Yes.
all going to be really helpful information. So, let's dive right into it. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in the chronic illness coaching space?
Yeah, I'd love to. Like Callie said, my name is Amanda Grabb. I'm a chronic illness, pain, and trauma coach. And I really never anticipated that I would be doing what I'm doing today. I'm also a mother of two. I have a son who is 11 and a daughter who is 9. They keep us very busy. And I've actually been married since I was 18. My husband and I have been together for 16 years. And he has been my rock through my personal journey with chronic illness, pain, and trauma. So I'm so thankful to him. I really became a chronic illness, pain, and trauma coach out of what felt like a necessity at the time. I've had a very difficult life that has involved many traumas, chronic pain, and I have 8 chronic illness conditions. And I really couldn't seem to find the specific support that I was looking for. I did therapy, I did DBT therapy, like all the types of therapy, went through several programs, and never just it just felt like there was just something missing. And I was really desperate to find a way to promote wellness and healing and recovery within chronic illness and pain. That was really important to me. And so, out of that desire, I started to create methods that enabled me to live a better quality of life, and really reclaim aspects of my life. And now I'm so blessed to be able to use those methods now with my one on one coaching clients. Yeah, that's kind of my story and how I kind of got into it. More on I guess I could say like I said, I fought being a coach actually for about 2 years. I really felt it like on my heart, that tug and that pull, but I was like, all the things like I'm not knowledgeable enough, I don't know, and I'm not an expert. I'm not, a counselor. Like, I don't know if I can do that. And so I really fought it. I think a lot of us fight that pull for some of us, right? Out of
Mhm.
fear and self-doubt and imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So it took me years to work through those things, like just in all honesty. And then finally, I just decided to pull the trigger when another coach reached out to me and she said, I see so much potential in you. I had already had people messaging me asking if there was a way to work with me. And so she's like, I have a coaching mentorship. How about apprenticeship? Why don't you come and, join that 6-month apprenticeship? And so I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know. And so I did it. And I'm so glad that I did because I wouldn't be where I am today. So
Amazing story. What were you doing before you got into this?
it's a good question. So, actually, to be completely transparent, prior to what I currently do, I basically hadn't had a job in probably 5 years due to just my chronic, like being disabled, right? Not being able to hold down a regular job. Prior to that, I did pretty much everything in the book. Um, in terms of like service and stuff, I did, waitressing, I did retail, I did newspaper route at one point. What else? Babysitting, just I basically started work at like 12, and at one point I was taking care of horses. Like, I've just had so many different types of jobs. My daughter and I were counting them the other day, and I was like, this is so weird. But yeah, so I kind of had like a little bit of everything. And I think that that's also helped me in a lot of ways too. And so has my life experiences, right? Like I said, I've not had an easy life, but I feel like my life has prepared me for what I do now. And so now I see it as a gift, whereas for so many years I saw it as a curse.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. Like going into, I was a registered dietitian. I was working in the weight management field, and I had that pull that you were talking about. I knew that diet played a huge role in IC,
Mhm.
and I knew that there was only one dietitian specializing in IC in the world. And
Wow.
I know it's crazy. And I was like, this is what I want to do, but do I have the knowledge and the experience to help people? And I don't know, someone along the line, maybe my first business mentor told me, your life experience is your experience. And I
Yeah.
think that is so true. I mean, I've lived with this for
Mhm.
27 years. I have all of that experience under my belt. I mean, especially with a chronic illness like I see, there isn't that much research out there and like definitive treatments that work for
Yeah.
people. So it's kind of like I've had to step into that role and just like fake it till you make it in the best way possible.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And for me, that's what I did too. I like when I said I created those methods, right? Like for me, it was really an individual pursuit that now is benefiting so many other people in our community, right? So, it's funny how that ends up working out. And yeah, I definitely think that, like I said, my whole life, everything that I went through, all the painful moments, traumas, everything has helped me be a powerful coach to my clients and to our community.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So what does working with your clients entail? Like being a chronic illness, pain, and trauma coach, like how do you help people?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the way that I kind of approach it is very personalized and individualized. So I kind of meet with the person and I offer kind of a free 1 hour, which is a pretty lengthy time, with everyone that is interested or looking for some extra support in that area. And we kind of just talk about where they're at. There's many stages along the chronic illness and pain spectrum, in my opinion. There's newly diagnosed. There's people that aren't even diagnosed that are still looking and trying to figure things out. There's people that have just figured out their diagnosis but still feeling very lost. There's people that know their diagnosis, have multiple others, and just need help managing and thriving in that life. So I really just come in and we evaluate what's going on, and then we make a plan and we say, this is what we're going to focus on. These are some of the goals. And we just really, that's really how I approach it. It's also client led, which means I don't necessarily always come in with an agenda. It's kind of like it's a free space, a safe space where my clients can come, cry, let out all the emotions, or, also celebrate the wins and just be like, hey, Amanda, this is what's been going on. And then that's my space to ask questions and just really help them explore where they're at and help them grow and heal. Even though it's not full healing, I do believe that we do heal in certain areas over our course of our journey. And I also help them embrace the pain as well as learn how to use my methods like assess, embrace, and pain to really create a solid foundation, that helps them then build off and create a life of quality and one that they love and that they feel is full of purpose and meaning.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of like if somebody was just diagnosed with IFC and they came to you, like what would that first visit look like?
No, that's great. So typically, I do deal with a various amount of illnesses, right? Because myself, I have eight, but I also do, coach people that don't have the conditions I have. And so, if someone were to come to me with IC, for instance, typically I would tell them right up that like that's not an illness I necessarily have hands-on experience with, but that I'm more than willing to, put in the time to learn a little bit about that, and see how that knowledge can help inform the work we do together. But again, because it is client led and it's more working through all of the ups and downs and unpredictability, and just really getting that pain and symptom management under control, and then eventually once that's kind of done is getting those coping strategies and skills, that are particular to managing chronic illness and pain in place, so that they go from, what do I do? My whole life's been turned upside down to, oh, okay, yes, I finally see like the progress. I see where I'm going. I know, that it's going to be slow and it's not going to be immediate, but that it is that I'm in the right direction. And I have a safe space, that I can go and just really get that support. And then typically if it's an illness and I know there's another coach that specializes in it, I would also tell them about that as well, just because I do think it's great when your coach does have that hands-on experience with the particular condition, right? Whereas with, I don't have IC, right? I do have
Right.
like IBS and then like bowel things that I've had to deal with over the years, but it's definitely not the same. So
Mhm.
if I know of a chronic illness coach that specializes in their condition, typically I'll also kind of be like, hey, there's this person too. You know, you could definitely still work with me, but just know that this might be a better fit.
Yeah, and I respect that. I think that, is the ethical thing to do when you're dealing with a person who needs help, but it's not necessarily like you're within your scope or your
Exactly.
experience. So I love that you do that. It sounds like working with you is focused on, getting that support. It's about empowering
Mhm.
people to just learn about their condition and just I
Take,
love that word. I love the word empowered. I say it like every
yeah.
single day. And then
It's in,
also,
yeah, me
oh,
too.
sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just saying it's also in my Instagram thing. It's empowering you to live the best life you can with chronic illness, pain, or trauma, something like that, while making
Perfect.
wellness with illness. Oh, yeah. And that's another big component I totally forgot to speak on. So, as I said in the beginning, how it was my goal to, promote wellness and healing and recovery. That is another huge component of what I do with my clients. So, it's not just about like managing the symptoms and the pain, and learning how to like live life with these conditions and the pain, but it's also about how can we like proactively take charge of our life and still do things that we know are going to benefit our body, whether they and there's a lot of challenges when doing that, right? When we try and do exercise, there's a lot of challenges in that area for many of us. I actually refer to working out or exercise as body movement, just because I feel that that's a better illustration of kind of what I'm trying to encourage my clients to do. It doesn't need to be an intense cardio thing. It can be just very light stretching. It can be walking or just walking in circles in the house to get that blood flowing. So it's also about really promoting all of those like the holistic approach of wellness incorporated within the illness and pain and trauma as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. The other thing I was going to say is you probably work with your clients to build confidence in advocating for themselves. Am I right
Oh,
by that?
100%. Oh, yes. There's times actually where my clients have taken me in on Zoom in their doctor's appointment so I could be there with them. And they just, because they know I'm there, their doctor obviously like needs to know, but they just explain, they've been gaslit for years and they're terrified. And they just, we have a great session. I tell them, this is what we need to do. This is where, how you can do it. I even send some of my clients little templates, like a bunch of different ways to say things so that they feel more confident and the way they're wording things or articulating them to their medical providers, to get the appropriate treatment, because that is such a hard challenge that so many of us face.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the medical gaslighting aspect is real. I think everyone listening to this has probably experienced that at some point. So it is something
Yeah.
that you need to unfortunately prepare for.
Sorry, most definitely. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I kind of want to talk about like the feelings of, you know, when you're experiencing symptoms, in this case for interstitial cystitis, symptoms of frequency, urgency, pain, and being made to feel like it's all in your head, or maybe your doctor makes a comment that kind of implies that it's all in your head, or maybe like you're stressing yourself out and it's related to that, or just have a glass of wine, it'll calm you down. Like,
Mhm.
how do you recommend people working through those, like, am I crazy or am I making this up type thoughts?
Yeah. So actually, one of the main reasons that we can see imposter syndrome within chronic illness and pain occur, is actually medical gaslighting, repeated medical gaslighting, right? So that's when it doesn't just happen one time, but it happens over and over again. And we do actually start to doubt our own reality. Um, the things saying like, am I crazy? Is it just stress? Am I not trying hard enough? Or we do know we're not crazy and we're just like wanting them to hear us and they just refuse to, right? So it's very frustrating. So in terms of dealing with imposter syndrome, I think a great way to get started with kind of dealing with that is really knowing some of the reasons why it's occurring in the first place. And like I just said, medical gaslighting is definitely one of those reasons. Another reason is having an invisible or a dynamic disability, right? Because our day to day can look very drastically different. And we look fine from the outside, right? And that's a lot of times another challenge for us because we don't look sick, right? And so it's just like, oh, you're disabled, but you look fine. And so again, that can make us question, am I a fraud? Like I did so much yesterday, I like cleaned the whole house, and then now I'm stuck in bed for like 4 days, right? So we start to again question like our own reality again because of those things. So once we have a better understanding of the reasons that we are having, imposter syndrome or 8K, I'm crazy, right? We can begin to work through it a lot easier. And it's important for us to remember a few things when working through our imposter syndrome. We really want to shower ourselves with love, care, and compassion throughout this whole process. And we really need to be mindful of that internal talk and those thoughts, right, as they come, so we can catch them. And in many ways, we're having to quiet that inner critic. Really, that's who that's that voice that's telling us, or doubting our own reality. And by acknowledging that they're there, the inner critic is loud, right? And saying, okay, I acknowledge these thoughts and these feelings, and then redirecting and reframing them using facts, right? Because the fact is deep down in your heart that you are ill, and that these are just some of those doubts that can come our way, but deep down we know we have a diagnosis. Or even if we don't have a diagnosis, if we intuitively know that something is wrong and it's not just what doctors are saying, we need to continue to trust that. And so I think that's really important for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about like all the people I've talked to who have been medically gaslit at some point. And, I feel like there's multiple I guess paths you could take in navigating this. Like you could what am I trying to say? You could confront the doctor. I guess
Oh
that's
yeah.
one option. You
Yep.
could fire the doctor,
Yeah.
you could
I
find
always
someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I always say there's no shame and no problem. I always say that, our doctors work for us, right? And I think that the medical system has failed in realizing that to some extent, right? It's always the doctor telling us what they're going to do for us. If this is the medication you're going to take, try this for a couple of weeks, they come back, we'll see how it is, right? There isn't very much room for almost this communion between the two of us to have this patient doctor care that it's like directed by both people. So you really do want to find a practitioner and specialists that you can trust that are going to listen to you. And if you aren't experiencing that and there is just medical gaslighting happening over and over again, go get a second opinion or a third opinion. Like, go find the right doctor. And it can take time, but it is really important that we are building a medical team that can support us and all of our different challenges. For me, I have like, I think 8 different specialists and then my primary, right? So, but it took me years to build that team, and find doctors that didn't gaslight and knew about my conditions. I have endometriosis, which is not, it's becoming more known, but very much, there's very little research. There's not a lot of treatment options. There's no cure, right? So like, I'm now seeing the top, guy for endometriosis here in Canada. But it took me like almost 14 years to get there. Right. So, I mean, yeah, definitely look at getting rid of a doctor if they're not, giving you that voice, and hearing you out.
Yeah.
I actually have helped clients kind of transition, like telling a doctor, like, this is how I'm feeling. And if I continue to feel this way, these are the steps I'm going to need to take. And a lot of times that's enough for that doctor to be like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was making you feel that way. A lot of times these doctors are overworked, and they just see us as another number, sadly.
Mhm.
And so we really need to show our humanity to some extent. But at the same time, I also find being overly emotional actually goes against us as women a lot.
Yeah.
So be human, but at the same time, try and go there with a calm, confident demeanor if you can, right? And that's where having like a coach to really help prepare you for those times can be so instrumental, because you have that support. You can talk it through and really prepare with that person, and then you end up having a really great discussion, or things can really shift in one visit.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so important to find someone that you trust and is listening to you. I mean, I personally have had experiences where I am just sitting there in the doctor's office listening to what they want to do to me or give me medication wise. And I'm just like not feeling that whatsoever. Like that's not what I want. But I am a huge people pleaser and I'm afraid to speak up for myself a lot of the time. So I remember those feelings of just like, I'm going to call them my inner rage monster, just like trying to come out, but me just like pushing them down because I'm trying to be a nice person. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes like that can bite me in the butt.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in the chronic illness space just are really kind people, but we all are like the people pleaser
A lot of
personality,
us. Yeah,
and
definitely.
that can definitely be a struggle. And I think another thing I want to mention is these most of these IC doctors and specialists, they're not people who are living with this condition. They have no
Yes.
idea what we
Yeah.
go through. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to remember that. And I mean, it I I don't know what I want to say here. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree with you. I remember being so frustrated. I would tell my husband, and my husband and I would talk, and just like, why can't the doctors help more? Right? They can, write a script really quick, and they can, put a referral through or whatever, but they're not really helping me. Like, I don't know how to live with this. And they're just like, telling me to try this medication or do this therapy and it'll help wonders. But really I do it and nothing changes. And I feel like I was left in the dark with no guidance. And that made it so much harder, like truly made it so much harder and so much more lonely and so much more hopeless, because I just felt like I had no direction and I had no way of improving my life. Even with some really great doctors on board, I still felt that. And so, to kind of agree with what you said, the doctors don't know what it's like day in and day out living with our pain, living with our conditions. And so, it is really vital that we find that support somewhere, whether it be, through just the online community that we've built as, spoonies or warriors, whatever you want to refer us as, or, like get a coach that can help, kind of hold your hand through all of these things that are very challenging to navigate on your own.
Hmm. Yeah. And you're going to be like, you know, your body the best. You're going to be your best advocate. And so sometimes it just gets to a point where you need to fight for yourself. And part of that might mean like documenting how many times you're going to the bathroom or what your pain levels are at different points throughout the day, like having those notes where you can
So
actually
vital.
hand it to the doctor and
Mhm.
then they can be like, oh, I didn't realize like you were in this much pain. And it's like, yes, I've been telling you this. So that's
Yeah,
just one method that I recommend, if a doctor really isn't like
me
getting it.
too. Yeah,
Is there
definitely.
anything else that you would recommend in that aspect?
Yeah. So another obstacle I find a lot of my clients and just, chronic illness challenges can be when trying to find the right treatment and the right care is that, doctors can sometimes be very closed-minded or very, this is my approach, and it either, you like it or you don't. It works or it doesn't. And so in those cases, I often recommend, yes, you tracking your symptoms, bringing that with you, but also bringing in terms of like, what kind of treatments have you tried? What medications have you tried that haven't worked? What medications are working? What have you tried in the past? What's your current regimen? And what are you looking for now in your current to add to your current treatment or pain management, currently, that really helps the doctor, because then they're not having to scroll and look, for all the medications you've tried over the, 10, 5, 4 years, whatever the journey, right?
Mhm.
You've done all that heavy lifting for them, and you've come prepared, and they're like, wow, like, thanks, this is huge help. Like, yes, I can see that medication we tried. Okay, yep, that didn't work for these reasons. And it can just really help eliminate a lot of that back and forth, and really make the time in the appointment go a lot quicker and get the result that you're looking for a lot easier, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
It's like making a medical resume.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I love that.
Whatever
Yes.
it takes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So I was looking through, so everyone, Amanda has a podcast, and I was looking through her podcast episodes, and one of your episodes you were talking about body betrayal.
Betrayal.
Can you
Yeah,
talk more about that?
definitely. Yes. Body betrayal is a big one that I see kind of come up a lot. You know, it just does. And, a lot of times body betrayal is when we feel imprisoned by our own bodies, when there's a severe lack of trust in our body's capabilities, especially when we're going from, not having pain or illness to having pain and illness. We feel betrayed by our bodies. We feel like, what the heck? Like, like, why aren't you doing what I need you to do when I need you to do it? So, working through body betrayal is completely possible. It just does take some time, effort, and energy, obviously, on our part. My first suggestion for working through body betrayal would be, I think will be difficult for a lot of you, but it is essential, is, we want to work towards accepting our bodies as they are currently, even with the illness and pain. And I know that is hard, knowing I've been through the journey myself. It's not easy. But we don't have to go from feeling betrayed to acceptance overnight. But we do really want to be intentional and put that effort in so that we can eventually get there. Because until we accept our bodies as they are, we will not be able to fully learn how to respond to our body's needs and limitations. And we also need to remember that we're so much more than our bodies, right? Like, so much more than our bodies. And the sooner we accept that we're more than our bodies, the closer we are to working with and within our physical limitations, symptoms, and pain. And this really gives us the opportunity to create a version of ourselves that we can be proud of, and a life that we're happy to live in, and not being stuck, in bed and pain-filled body, and knowing that that's not our entire existence. And it doesn't have to be, right? If when we put that effort into creating a life that we want and desire, it is possible. At least I believe it, and I see it with my clients all the time, right? A big thing I say is, making wellness with illness and pain possible, because sometimes it can feel like it's an impossible endeavor, but it is possible. And it, just like that with body betrayal, it is possible to overcome it and to, work through it. It just, like I said, it does take some time and effort.
Yeah, no, and I had a thought when you were saying that, is that I see a lot of people with IC chasing the idea of remission, which
Yes,
is great.
it
I think
is. Yeah.
that, staying hopeful, trying to nourish your body, doing all the awesome lifestyle changes is great. But I think sometimes it isn't helpful, and it can set you up with unrealistic expectations, because at this point, we don't know who can and can't reach remission from IC. And
Yeah.
also, everyone's definition of remission is
It's
different.
different. Yeah.
So I see a lot of people struggling with that and kind of chasing that goal.
Yeah. And, you know, a big part of my journey and kind of how embracing the pain was born was me accepting that, not that my life wouldn't improve or that my illnesses couldn't get better or my pain couldn't get better, but that they were going to be a part of my life forever. Right? We can hit remission, but we still have that illness or that disease, right? It's still there. And at any point it can pop back up and make its appearance. And I've been there myself. I've had my fibromyalgia, for instance, go in remission, and then it comes back full blown, right? So it just really depends. And I think it's so important that we accept that this is a lifelong journey. And if we hit remission, amazing. If we have moments where we see healing and recovery, fantastic. But if we focus and fixate on that too much, again, we are going to set ourselves up for those unrealistic expectations and ultimately cause ourselves to feel more defeated when and if that doesn't actually happen in the time frame we want it to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have my clients, when they start working with me, set 3 SMART goals. So
Yeah, me
I
too.
forget what SMART stands for, but it's like realistic, time
I know,
bound,
yes.
we want to make
Specific, yeah.
sure, we want to make sure that you're not saying like, I want to reach your mission in 3 months, and then you're
Mhm.
set up for failure. We don't
Yeah.
want that. And I also see a lot of people, you know, s- there are people out there on social media who claim that they cured themselves from interstitial cystitis. And I personally struggle with that sometimes, that feeling of, oh, how did they do that? And also, why am I not cured from interstitial cystitis? And feelings of like resentment, but also confusion, because it is a chronic
Hmm.
illness
Yeah.
as far as we know right now. So,
Yeah.
have you ever experienced something like that?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so much. And it really saddens me because I think those types of promises have really led our community in a serious lack of trust towards real, helpful service providers, like in terms of like coaching in particular, right? Because there are so many people making all of these, in my opinion, a lot of them are false promises, quick fixes. And, people, when we're dealing with the thick of it, we're desperate. Like, right? Like I found I've been in that situation before too, where I just want to just have it all go away. I just want to feel better. I want to resume my life as a normal person. But it does so much damage, especially when, we give into it and it doesn't work, or, we're hesitant, obviously, because we're thinking like I actually have had people really, I've had personal people in my life who have said, essential oils are the way to go. You just need to do essential oils and it's going to heal you completely. I have a couple testimonial videos of other people and I'm like, okay. And no, I'm sorry. I don't believe that essential oils on their own can
Right.
heal an uncurable disease.
It's
I'm, I'm,
these I see it everywhere. Oh my gosh. I like the
yeah,
parasite cleanses. No, the detoxes. Yeah, the parasite cleanses,
yeah.
the like mold toxicity type
Hmm.
stuff, heavy metal toxicity. Like it might be helpful for
Helpful.
people, but I'm not a believer. And when people like push that on you and like kind of force it down your throat,
Yeah.
it rubs me the wrong way.
Oh, me too. And believe it or not, these same people that were, saying the oils thing, they actually told me I was doing a disservice to my clients and that my clients would be better off if I directed them to their essential oil company,
Oh, that's
which
so frustrating.
just killed me. It hurt so much because I'm just like, you are like so ignorant to what we deal with. If that's what you think, like you truly think that, like, I'm not saying I'm superwoman or that I'm like, I'm healing everyone I work with, but at the same time, I'm not giving them false hope, right? Like, do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
that was a tough one. But yeah, I've dealt with that so many times along my journey.
Yeah. There's always going to be people out there that claim that they have a cure. And most of the time it's going to be not accurate, or it could be a scam. Like
Or
it's
harmful, like actually
harmful.
harmful to you and your
Yes.
body, not helpful. Like I've seen that happen too.
Yeah. I also have, and it is infuriating sometimes. Like just it just makes people feel like what they're doing isn't enough. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay, well, if I haven't been cured yet, like there must be something wrong with me. And like I said, I've been through that. I've
me too.
lived
I,
27 years with this condition. Like, yeah,
mhm.
I'm feeling the best I ever have in my life, but I'm still not in remission by my standards. So
Yeah,
occasionally I'll be like, ugh, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm not doing enough. People are
yeah.
gonna think that I'm not a good, like, IC dietitian
I know,
practitioner,
right? Oh,
because
it's so
there
real, that
are
struggle.
and there's coaches out there that are like, hey, I'm in remission, you should work with me. And that's
Yeah,
like, ugh, I
I
I
know.
love that for them, I really
Oh
do.
yeah.
it's just like, oh,
But
it
it's
makes
not
me
fair to
feel
the other person, I think.
inadequate sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Totally. And I also worry about that a lot. I know I've worked through it a lot, but I mean, I also said to my husband and my friends, like, well, I'm not exactly healed. Like, why would anyone want to work with me if I'm not healed? And they're like, but you're not healed, Amanda, but your life is like a 180 from what it was. And that is what they're coming to you for. Right.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I totally get you with that because I have the same thing. I'm like, oh, I wonder how that they're doing that. Like, that's a big promise. Like,
Right.
I wish I knew.
Right. And I used to, like, when I started out in my business, I like pretended everything was perfect, and I
Oh,
got to a point where I was like, it's not perfect and I should start being honest with people. And when I started, showing with
showing.
full transparency like what I go through, people were just loving it. And I was like, okay, this is great. Like, this is helping a lot of people instead of just acting like everything's, perfect all the time, because it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I do too. If anyone follows me on Instagram, they'll know I'm very active in my stories and it is authentic. You'll see me crying, you'll see me, laughing, you'll see like I literally have you walk through my day. And there's sometimes that day is not pretty. Like last week, actually talking about false hope and all that stuff and those challenges of like feeling like we're doing something wrong. I had someone tell me that I shared about my pain management, and one of those methods is obviously prescribed pain medication. And they told me, that I need to pray harder and have faith, all that kind of stuff. And
That one
that's why
gets
God
me.
hasn't healed me. And
That gets me.
yeah. And so I was very vulnerable and I shared what happened on my stories, bawling my eyes out in the process, just to tell people this, this still happens to me. And, I want you to know that it's not your fault. We haven't done anything wrong. God doesn't heal everybody, right? Like it
Right.
just doesn't happen. It's great when it does, but it's not guaranteed. And and I feel like it's such a horrible thing to put that pressure on
It's
someone.
not appropriate to say to
It's
someone.
not. It's not. So, long story short, I'm not a blocker, but I did block that person because they also then sent me a story when my pharmacy got robbed and said, "Oh, they got robbed. That's another sign, that you need to
Oh
get off your
man.
medicine." And I'm like, "Dear God, like give
Get
me
out of
a
here with that.
break." Yeah, exactly. So I was like, block.
Oh
But
man.
it's tough, some of the things that we are confronted with from people that just, and I don't think it's necessarily intentional ignorance, but it really is ignorance. They just don't know. And it could be coming from a well-intentioned place.
Yeah.
But I don't care how well-intentioned it is, like that is harmful to us and our community when you're spreading things like that. It is absolutely harmful.
Yeah, they don't realize what that does to us. I'm a very sensitive person,
Yeah.
very. And over the past few years, I've had to really develop a thick skin to these types of comments, like
Oh,
TikTok, Facebook. Those two are the worst. People
oh,
are
I'm
very
sorry.
mean sometimes. It's totally fine. I've
Yeah.
gotten used to it, but people are really mean through the internet, and
Yeah.
it's something that is real, and you learn to deal with, but it does affect us. And there comes a
Yeah.
point where you do need to just block these people and not
Yeah.
think too hard about it.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And what's so sad is even after years of dealing with that, I actually found myself like not taking my pain meds that day. Like I was like, no, maybe she's right.
Mhm.
But I was like, no, no, I'm not doing that to myself. I do not deserve to sit here in a ball crying, suffering just because another person thinks that I shouldn't be on this pain medication. Like, no,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah. And I've occasionally, and by occasionally, I mean like probably twice a month, have comments on my TikTok about how IC doesn't exist. And those are the most
oh,
infuriating comments.
yeah,
And
I know.
it's hard to deal with those, really is.
I know, just like people say POTS or EDS isn't real, right? I mean, but they also didn't think fibromyalgia was a real disease years ago, right? And now they're, luckily now more doctors are coming around to, yes, it is a real thing and it does exist, right? But yeah, that one is always really tough. And also another topic that I find comes up a lot too is when we have these rare conditions is the doctors don't necessarily believe, or worse, they don't even know it
They've
exists
never heard
and they
about it.
don't know how to serve or help the person and they actually do damage.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
just had a client go to the ER last week. She has POTS, and she got in I think it's called an animatic state, where she basically, if she doesn't get her feet elevated, she passes out. So she said, I have to do this. I'm going to pass out. She passed out, fell out of the wheelchair. And she also has EDS. So they were pulling on her arms. And
Oh,
so, because of the EDS and the hypermobility, they completely came out. And so now she's in agony like a week later because of what they did. And she fell and hurt herself more because they didn't believe her, or that POTS was even real, or they didn't even know what it was. And I
mhm.
just think that is, it's horrible. It's horrible when you're
Yeah.
going to depend on medical care and you go and they have no idea what you have. They don't believe you, and they don't even know how to help you. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like going to a urologist for IC and them telling you to drink cranberry juice, or going to a pelvic floor physical therapist and having them tell you to do Kegels. That might not
yeah,
make sense to you, but it's a red
no,
flag across the board.
yeah, yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah.
And I've heard those things too, like
Oh,
even with my
good.
illnesses. So I think
Good.
I totally get what you mean. Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, not awesome, but good
No,
that
I know
we're
what
on
you
the
mean.
same page.
Yes. Yeah.
So another thing I wanted to talk about was it kind of ties into what we were saying earlier, but when someone with a chronic illness compares themselves from
Mm.
where they are now with their illness to where they were pre-illness,
Yes.
how do you recommend kind of working through those feelings?
Yeah. So first, I just want to briefly explain a little bit more what I mean by self comparison between before illness and after illness. So what that kind of means is we're all familiar kind of with self comparison in terms of like comparing ourselves to others, but that's not what we're talking about in this kind of context. What I mean is comparing our previous non-ill body and self to our ill-filled, pain-filled body self. So I hope that just like clarifies that a little bit, because I know it can kind of be like, what the heck? So in terms of that, it's another really big topic for discussion for sure. There's a lot of layers to this. So the first thing, we want to do is focus more on what we can do and less on what we can't. And I know we hear that all the time, and it's a lot easier said than done. But when we're getting stuck in this comparison trap, we're often saying, oh, well, I used to be able to do this and I can't, right? So like it's essential that we really do try our best to focus on what we can do, or find modified ways to do what we used to do, but without hurting or harming ourselves further. So for instance, like one of my clients loves to garden, right? But she can't stand and bend, so she's gotten stools. She uses her walker to sit on, and she does one pot or one area a day. She waters the next day, so she breaks things down so she can still do her hobby, but it's not like she's still trying to do it the old way and can't do it and getting frustrated and defeated, right? So it's really about finding ways to do the things you used to be able to do, but maybe it just looks different and might even feel a bit different at the start, but it doesn't mean it's not worth trying those things, right?
Yeah, I have an example for IC. It would be like prior to having IC, you would go out for alcoholic beverages with your friends. And now that you have IC, you might not be able to do that. Yes, you can
Yeah.
still go out with them. You can find an alternative. You can, bring your own beverage and you can still enjoy that. And I think a lot of people go through a mourning phase. They're
Oh, definitely.
mourning the loss of like all of the amazing foods and drinks that they could have before that they can't have now. And what I tell people is just, try to focus on what you can have rather than what you can't have, and realize
Yeah.
that it's not most likely not going to always be like this. Things will
Yes,
get better.
exactly.
It might be small improvements very slowly, but it will get better as you learn your triggers and learn how things affect your body.
Exactly. And there is a lot of trial and error in that process of figuring out what you can do now, right? And so I think that's another really important thing to remember, is that there's going to be trial and error, and you have to really just embrace that, right? Otherwise you're just going to get defeated and give up on trying to do the things that you actually love or once loved. And we need things that we love in our lives. We need hobbies, we need things that light us up on light us on fire and make us happy. And I do think it is important to also grieve the loss, right? Like we do want to acknowledge the losses. I just always say, don't park there. Right. You can take a little time to cry and have that little pity party, if you will,
You can
and
idle there.
grieve. Yeah. But don't park there. You don't stay there. You just take a little bit of time, you let that out, and then you're like, okay, let's go. Like we can do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not saying it's that simple, but as you do it more, the easier it becomes, right? And that's the way it is for so many things with chronic illness and pain in terms of managing symptoms and pain is like the more you get used to things and the more you do something, the easier it becomes. And I think another thing too is just because you can't do something today doesn't mean you won't be able to do it, in a month's time, in 6 months' time, in a year, right? There were so many things I never thought I would be able to do. I never imagined myself working again. I never imagined that I'd be able to lift up my children again. And I'm able to do that. And my kids are freaking 11 and 9, and I can still lift them up. Like, at times, not all the time, but you know what I mean? Like those things that I really truly believed would never happen. I am
Yeah.
now living, right? So, like, that is something to hold on to, truly hold on to that. Is kind of my suggestion to anyone kind of struggling with this, as well as really just being mindful of when you're getting caught up in that self-comparison trap, in particular the one we just described. Acknowledging that it's happening, honor those thoughts and feelings, kind of like the pity party thing, and then take the time you need to work through it with self-love and compassion, and then do your best to just move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen people get stuck in that pity party state for way too long, and it's
Yeah.
just not serving them.
Yeah.
And it's going to have to come from within. I mean, I can tell you all about the progress that, my clients have made, but it's going to have to come from you. You have to believe that things can
Yes.
improve, and you have to just make that decision.
Yeah, I always call that the like mindset and mentality, right? Which I know sounds horrible, but it is one that a lot of us can get stuck in. I was guilty of getting stuck in that too. I took like 2 years living in that victim mentality and mindset. What I mean by that is just like, there's no hope. My life is never going to get better. Like, my whole life is doomed, like kind of things like that. But then when I finally was like, you know what? No, I'm going to take proactive action. I decide how my life unfolds, not this illness, not this pain, right? And that's when we get that empowered mindset. And that's what we want and need
Mhm.
in order to, be able to bring some joy and quality of life and healing into our life, right?
Yeah. I had the same thing happen. Like doctors couldn't help me anymore. I kind of went through 2 years of my life just in that pity party and living with it and sucking it up and ignoring all of the things like
That would
that
maybe
doctors told
help.
me I shouldn't be doing. And I was doing them. Like I was drinking
Okay.
alcohol, I was eating whatever I wanted to, not managing my stress. And then I hit rock bottom and I was like, you know what? The only way to go is up.
Up. That was
And
me too. That was me too.
unfortunately, that's what it takes sometimes.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, look at us now. We're
Yeah,
thriving and we're helping other people. So I think that's really awesome.
it is. And last, but I just quickly want to also share with the self-comparison thing is really try and embrace who you are now and who you're working to become, right? You might not be the person you want to be right now, but you have the ability to work and to develop and grow as a person, even with your challenges, right? And sometimes I think we get so focused on what we can't do that we forget that there's so much we can do to help
Mhm.
ourselves, right? And so I think that's just such an important thing. And to also focus our attention more on the small wins and the steps that we do achieve along the way. I always say this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? Like we can't just go full force. We're gonna be run down, sweating, and like we're not gonna be able to continue to go, right? If we address it as a marathon and we take our time and we stop and we rest and then we do things more slowly, we're able to do that marathon and thrive throughout that marathon, right? So that's
Mhm.
just a little analogy I like to use
Yeah.
sometimes.
No, I love that analogy. I could talk about that for another hour with you, but
Yeah.
we will just end it on that note. Amanda, where can
Yeah.
everybody find you on social media and your podcast?
Yes, my podcast is called Embracing the Pain. And I am on Facebook and Instagram. My Instagram handle is embracing the pain one day at a time. There is some underscores in there. It's a
We'll
very
link
long
it.
name, but yeah, I'm sure Callie can link it in the put the link in the description of the episode. And then my website's embracingthepain.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming on and sharing your expert tips and tricks with us. It's
Oh, it was
really
my
appreciated.
pleasure. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. Really, I have to admit, I was a little nervous, but I'm so glad that I decided to jump in. And I think we had a really great conversation. And I just really appreciate what you do as well for your IC community. It's incredible.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.